Time now for Lions Central. Here's Brandon Alisaglu and Nick Kostora.
Welcome back to Lions Central Radio. I am Nick Kostora, along with my co-host, Brandon Alisaglu. And, Brandon, it would make sense that we decide to take a week off from the show, and probably the biggest news for the Lions this offseason happens while we do.
Yeah, go figure. Try to enjoy a good holiday weekend, and the Lions go and do something. They like to ruin plans like that.
Yep, that's just how it works. So let's go ahead and let's get right into that big news, which is the big Matthew Stafford contract extension. It is the talk of the Lions right now. Detroit gave him a 3-year extension with $43 million guaranteed in it. He's got a $27.5 million signing bonus. This deal is going to make Stafford the 6th highest QB annual salary-wise. He puts him behind Joe Flacco, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, and Tony Romo. The question I think we have to ask and answer here is this contract the right move? Is it worth it?
Well, as we discussed in our first show, I think it was, I wasn't really on board with them giving him an extension right now, just because of this. Well, now we got to question it. Is he worth this kind of cash? And I guess, to be fair, and no, I'm not saying the Lions are winning the Super Bowl this year, but we probably would have had the same questions last year about Joe Flacco. I was worried about the amount of money that they're giving him for somebody who's kind of proven it, but not, and is certain former quarterbacks will attest to, and we'll get into that later. But Stafford's had these great stats. He's got 5,000 yards, through the air in a season. What was it, 41 touchdowns, I think? But there is that glaring 1-23 record against our opponents with 500 or better record. And how do you feel about it?
I think Detroit was kind of handcuffed here. This is a move they had to make. I'm on board with it. I think it was worth it. I mean, we actually they cut back on his rookie salary, and it opened up cap space for the team. You lock up the franchise corner piece until 2017. I don't see Detroit. I mean, if they could get it done now, good. I think it's early enough in the off season. It won't be a distraction or anything. And I'm not sure it actually would have been a distraction if this went on until next year. But it's out of the way now. Good. The money wise, it's high, but quarterback salaries are being inflated. I don't know. Stafford's been on the positive end of that 2 ways now with his, being the first pick in the draft, and now he gets paid after Flacco gets a massive deal. It's just how the trade is going right now. I can't argue with the money. I don't see them being able to give him any less. So I think this was the right move, and I'm happy with the time that they were able to do it too.
Yeah, that makes sense. As far as, I just watched that, I think it's called Broke, the 30 for 30 by ESPN or something like that, about all the athletes going broke. If Matthew Stafford goes broke, he has just colossally screwed up his finances, because he is set up to make a killing throughout his career. He's going to be 29 when this contract runs up, so he should get one more mega deal, and plus that mega deal he started with that you alluded to, he's in line to make points. I think I saw some estimates around $200 million over the course of his career, and that's just from the Lions. But as for the cash, I feel it's the going rate. There's nothing they can do about that. They're giving him $15.3 million per season, and the weird thing is his age group and where he is, and the production that he's had, it's hard to find people to compare him to. When you compare him to, say, Aaron Rodgers, well, he makes a little under $3.5 million less per year. Or Brees is making $20 million. But the thing is, if you want to compare it to, say, RG3 or those young guys, that's not even fair. They're on this new contract scheme. It's difficult to compare, and it's basically apples and oranges. But I guess if you want to look at people who are making kind of sort of the same amount of money at the same amount of age, you have Sanchez, who's making $4 million less, which I think we can all agree Stafford for $4 million more is not a problem. That's Sanchez. And Sam Bradford makes $13 million a year, about $2.3 million less or something like that.
Yeah, and that's still his rookie deal.
Yeah, and I would happily pay that as well. It's right in the middle of the kind of the better quarterbacks, close to the Tony Romos and the Jay Cutlers, even though Jay Cutler's deal was actually, he's not making that much per year, I guess, anymore, but he also kind of signed that so long ago before this boom of cash that keeps coming on. But it's also based on, not on the production that he's had or say this one bad year compared to the one really good year. It's also based on where they think he's going to be. You pay for potential, and that's just the way it is. Look at all the old defensive ends that can't get work, or they're having to agree for money that they think they've earned a lot more, like the John Abrahams or who have Dwight Freeney's, whoever. It's because nobody wants to pay, and it's just like you've probably done in Madden for years. I'm not going to pay this old guy all this money. I'll just go get a young guy who I can do the same thing with for a lot less money.
Right, and what was Detroit's alternative here? Did they wait it out and potentially lose him? I mean, you have a guy who's at least been somewhat proven, and you know what you're getting. You have to pay him. He's behind Tony Romo in salary. I suppose that's the comparable one here, skill-wise. I don't know. He's obviously has more potential than Romo. Romo's making just a bit more money. Detroit did the right thing here, but another question is, because Stafford freed up cap space for the Lions, do you see any moves? I personally, I don't see any more moves coming free agency-wise this offseason, but do you see anything happening because of this?
Not particularly, just because I don't know where they would find a very cap-friendly number, even though they do have this extra money, that would really upgrade what they have. I mean, obviously every team still has a few holes, but I don't see anything happening. I think the best route, and the route that they'll probably go, because they are a smart team. And by the way, it's just under $5.5 million that they freed up, or that they have now for this year, according to Spotrac.com. Okay. Which is a pretty cool site. But I think they should go the route of the Denver Broncos, who rolled over all this money. I want to say it was like $11 million or something crazy from last year. So now they have, I think it's a $140 million cap number this year. And that's why they're able to afford all of these, star-studded players. It's just a really smart way to go, especially when you have big-name guys coming up for contract extensions soon.
Yeah, that Sue contract negotiation is still looming. So, yeah, I think you're right. That's the right way to go, is to actually let this money sit. The roster's pretty set where it is. There isn't any, massive name out there that they need to make a play for or anything. But, all right, let's go ahead. Let's shift gears to another side of this contract, and that's the comments made by Donovan McNabb. McNabb has a bit of a history with comments on quarterbacks, but let's go ahead. I'm going to give you the full quote here from McNabb and his thoughts on the Stafford contract, and that was, "It's about wins and losses again. Now, as a quarterback and as Matt Stafford, hey, I would take that contract just like Tony Romo took his contract. But is he worth top 5 money? I would have to say no. And I say that because it's about wins and losses. What has he really done for the Detroit Lions? Nothing." End quote. I think we're both going to have pretty strong opinions on this one. I try not to put too much stock into what McNabb has to say, but I don't know, for a QB who to me never won the big one, and he had his whole throwing up on the field in the Super Bowl bit to criticize a young QB who's doing the right things with a team that has never tasted success before. I don't like it. For me, I'd rather go see McNabb enjoy retirement. Maybe take a look at that contract he signed with the Redskins a couple seasons ago. I don't know. How are you feeling on this?
Well, and I like that you're trying to put Donovan McNabb out to pasture. But just to be a jerk, I'm going to go ahead and say, one, Stafford's not making top 5 money. He's actually only 6th. But
fair.
It does seem a little crazy to see Stafford. He's basically in the range of Tom Brady, Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers money, which that's all within about $1 million, and that's per year salary. The comments came off as kind of a bitter musing of an old man whose career ended before the big money hit, even though he was making big money, which I'm sure there was a quarterback from the early 90s that was complaining about that as well. It's just the way it works, the next person that up is going to make more money because this is such a booming business, and the people that didn't get to make that money, the ones that paved the way, well, they're not too happy about it. In a sense, McNabb is just doing his job now. That's his new job. But this is going to happen with every generation. And this is also coming from a guy whose career high touchdown number, I believe, is 31. Stafford topped that by 10.
Yeah, it's also coming from the guy who was benched for Rex Grossman at one point.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's hard to put any real credence in these comments. It's like Herm Edwards. I start yelling and I just whatever, dude.
He just doesn't stop. But for his part, Stafford had a pretty good response. I'll go ahead and read his quote on the whole thing, which was the beginning of the quote: "You get the praise when you win and all the loss on your shoulders when you lose. It's just the name of the game. I totally understand Donovan's point of view, but at the same time, I'm trying to please the Lions and my teammates and my coaches and nobody else. So people can say what they want to say, but as long as the guys in that locker room, in that building, believe in me, then that's all that matters," end quote. So Stafford took the high road here. He said pretty much just what he had to. He somewhat accepted the criticism, as unjust as it may have been, and he kept the focus on football. That's how I took it. So Stafford said all the right things he had to say here, I think.
No, yeah, really the only thing to say was it was a smart move. Just like heading over to onit.com/football radio, and you can get 10% off vitamins and supplements over there. They're new sponsors of ours. We're really excited. One, because it's our first sponsor. Two, because it's a cool product, and it'll save you some money. Again, that's onit.com/football radio. You'll get 10% off vitamins and supplements.
Absolutely. That is a great sponsor. And now we're going to go ahead and turn our gears towards the Ron Jaworski QB rankings that we get every year. These are always a hot topic. Everyone loves talking about them. So last year, Stafford was 14th in Jaws' ranking. This year, Jaws went ahead and gave him the 16th ranking. He tucked in between, Phillip Rivers got 17, and Tony Romo got 15. So not exactly the best company in the league. But there's no denying that Stafford, his numbers stuff dropped last season. So I think it's fair to see his ranking here drop a little bit.
Yeah, he did have kind of a step-back season with him being so young. It's not overly concerning. Obviously, it's not what you want your quarterback who you just handed a bunch of money to be doing, but that's the way that goes. Honestly, as far as the ranking goes, I think it's about right. Cutler and Romo are apt comparisons at this point in his career. They both can put up numbers, but neither of them's really known as a winner yet. And that 1-23 mark against winning teams in Stafford's career, it does kind of keep him there. Now, at the same time, as far as that goes, I think that's more of a reflection of the team, because what is the guy supposed to do who throws 41 touchdowns? The rest of your team should help you out somewhere along that line and get you a couple more wins against winning teams, but that's neither here nor there, I suppose. I think it'll probably be much different next year, too, depending on where things go. As far as, I think you're either going to see that if he doesn't take a big step forward, people are really going to start dropping him down those types of rankings, because they're going to be like, well, he reached his ceiling 2 years ago. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think that's really what we need to look at here. I think we're okay with him sitting at this point just because we know everything that happened last season. But if Stafford's sitting for some reason in the middle of Tony Romo and Phillip Rivers next year, it's not going to be acceptable. Stafford, 2013 is the time for him to take that leap forward, I guess. I don't know if that's a fair way to say it, because last season, or 2 years ago, he threw for 5,041 touchdowns or whatever. But there is a step that he needs to take, and that, beating better teams. This isn't the right company for him to keep. His potential is so much higher than 16. So the offense around him has enough talent that we can't see him take that step back. I don't know. Some of Jaworski's criticism I wasn't too keen on. He said he wasn't as efficient under center as he was in the shotgun. he seemed to struggle to read coverage as effectively. Too many forced throws. I didn't think he was any worse under center than he was in the shotgun. Did you get that vibe at all?
No, I mean, I haven't gone back and watched, every throw that he made last year. So I guess I can't say I'm as knowledgeable as Jaworski on that one. But even some of the things I read were the numbers just don't bear that out. So I have a hard time agreeing with him completely. I also find it, he's really high on those young guys. Did you see that?
Yeah, I'm really not buying this. You've got Russell Wilson at 12, Colin Kaepernick 11, Robert Griffin at 13. It just seems awful quick to be putting those guys that high on the ranking. I like, obviously everyone liked what we saw out of them last season, but are you comfortable putting them ahead of a Cutler or even Cam Newton? I think I'd rather see it higher than them at this point. I'm definitely not on board with that. I don't like how quickly he jumped the gun with those guys.
Well, wave goodbye to your credibility, buddy. You just said Cam Newton should be higher than Robert Griffin III. You heard it. You guys all heard it. I have witnesses.
Yeah. I did.
This is one of those. Where is the real problem here? Is how much stock can we put into that 1 year? Because Griffin absolutely killed it last year. He had, the second or third highest quarterback rating? It was something nuts. And Wilson might have been... Go ahead.
No, I think my main problem here is with Kaepernick because he didn't play that full season. I think Russell Wilson's someone we're going to see hovering closer to the top 10 pretty much his whole career, and probably Griffin will too. So I don't like Kaepernick at 11 mainly. Just he was electric, but he only played half a season. Can you really say he's the 11th best quarterback in football already?
Yeah, that's a little crazy. How often do these gimmick offenses usually last? The Wildcat worked for half a season, maybe a season, then everybody started doing it. And the NFL doesn't hire stupid people. These guys, if you don't come up with a good way to defend the read option, you're going to be gone. The next guy up he'll get the job because he'll walk into his interview saying, this is how we're going to stop the read option. Is Kaepernick a good enough pocket passer? I haven't seen that. I don't know. Especially, he's not going to have his lead receiver this year. That's his bread and butter. I don't know that he's going to be able to develop that kind of chemistry with Bolden right away. And Bolden's not, they're not the same type of receiver really either. Bolden's a lot more physical. I kind of feel like they were too highly rated, but the thing is, they did have better years.
You raised a lot of questions there, and I think that's the big thing with them is there's still so many questions. So is it fair to already have them higher than players like Stafford or Cutler, or even I guess I get being higher than Rivers at this point, but I think Stafford is in a fair spot, but then I also don't like some of the guys that are ahead of him, so I'm contradicting myself while also completely understanding what's going on in my own head. So I don't know. Stafford is the 16th best quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he's actually the 16th best quarterback in the NFL. I think he's better than that. And 2013 is when he absolutely has to prove it because he can't be stagnant for another year.
Well, if anybody wants to place a bet on the over-under for next year with the number being set at 16, or even give you 15.5 just to be nice, sure, I will gladly take the over. That he will have a higher rating next year, and I'd be willing to throw down at least $3 or $4 on it. Just
and that's a bet. No. Yeah, I think. What do we want as a benchmark for him next year? Do we want to see him crack the top 12 of these rankings? Is that where we're hoping to see him fall into?
Ooh, that's a good question. I got to spring these on me. I'm going to have to say top 10. He has too many, unless I will give him the one caveat: if the offensive line absolutely implodes, and he gets another year to kind of turn that around, I suppose. But he needs to be a top 10 guy with all the weapons he has. And obviously, the other obvious caveat is injuries, which I'm glad I could say obviously and obviously twice. So that's 4 times in about 3 sentences. You're welcome, folks.
Okay.
I'd say top 10.
Yeah, and injuries are, they're there for everyone. But yeah, I'm with you. Top 10 is going to be the benchmark for Stafford. And for even more Stafford talk, which we are not going to be able to get enough of on this show, let's go ahead and turn to a pretty big interview that we were able to have with Tim Twentyman of DetroitLions.com, who's going to give us even more insight into the Stafford contract. So let's go ahead and turn to that conversation now. And we now, joining us on the program, we have the lead writer for DetroitLions.com, Tim Twentyman. Tim, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. The big news surrounding the Lions, obviously, right now is Matthew Stafford and his contract extension. The first question we want to ask you, we're going to come at you hard and heavy here. Is this the right amount of money and years to be giving to Stafford?
Well, I think if you look at just fair market value, this is what quarterbacks are getting. You look at the stream of deals that have been done lately. Aaron Rodgers, $20 million, Drew Brees, $20 million, Matt Ryan's gonna be around that $15 to $20 million mark. Tony Romo was a $15 to $20 million quarterback. That's just the going rate in the NFL right now. You look at Matthew Stafford; he's 1 year removed from taking this team to a 10-win season in the playoffs. He's 25 years old. He's got a strong arm, and when the team picked him number 1 overall in 2009, they really saw him as their guy, their franchise quarterback. And you guys know as well as me that this team hasn't had the best of luck in terms of trying to find quarterbacks. You might have to go to Bobby Lane to find one as talented as Stafford is. And look, the team's all in on Stafford. And, they got him for $15 million. I think that's fair market value. If you're Stafford, it's a 5-year deal. You're 29 when this deal's done, and you can, go and get yourself another mega deal if you perform over the next 5 years. So I think it's really a win-win for both teams. It saves the Lions about $7 million over the next 2 years. And Ndamukong Suh, Brandon Pettigrew, those contracts are coming up. So, that's money they can use toward that. So again, I just think it's a win-win for both sides.
Agreed. I think if they didn't pay it, somebody else would have. And what you were saying about Ndamukong Suh and Pettigrew feeds right into the next question. The immediate and long-term effects of the salary cap is the money that they've saved. Do you see them keeping that money to use in future negotiations with those two players that you just mentioned, or is there possibly another move coming out of this?
Well, there's always a move. Martin Mayhew, the general manager, is famous for saying that, look, there's never a finish line when it comes to player acquisitions and trying to improve this roster. I could see them go out maybe if a veteran tackle's available, maybe a veteran linebacker. Those are two positions I think that you maybe look at some inexperience there. But we have to remember, too, that, they're about a little over $4 million in cap space now with the few million that they got from this extension with Matthew Stafford, and that rolls over to next season. If they don't use it, they get it next year. And so, like I said, Brandon Pettigrew, this is the last year of his contract. He comes out and has, an 80-catch season like we know he can. Then we're talking extension there, and they'll probably want to get Ndamukong Suh, done. His contract is up through 2014. So, you can use it now, but I think their roster is pretty well set right now, and I think they might be looking toward that money, saving it, using it next year when they've got some big decisions to make.
That's a great point. And the rollover, look at the Denver Broncos, they're working that perfectly. Bringing us back to Stafford and where he fits in as far as right amount of money, right amount of years, is I'm sure you've seen or made aware of Ron Jaworski's ranking him as the 16th best quarterback in the league, which obviously puts him directly at average. That's right at the midpoint. Is that where you see Stafford is right now in this league?
I don't see him. He's not a top 5 quarterback. I think, to me, when I look at a top 5 quarterback, top 6, 7 quarterback, those guys have Super Bowl rings. Those guys are consistent winners. Matthew hasn't proven that yet. He had one great year. He's got a terrific arm. He can make all the throws. I think he's smart. But he's got to win, and he's got to win consistently. And those are the quarterbacks that are in that upper echelon. Those are the quarterbacks that are $20 million a year quarterbacks. Those are the quarterbacks that get into Jaws's, top 10 rankings. Now, all the stuff about the mechanics and all this other kind of stuff, I don't think that's as big a deal as people make it out to be. It sounds great, and it's something that people can talk about. But to me, Matthew Stafford is kind of one of those backyard quarterbacks, a lot like Brett Favre was. He can improvise. He can throw from a lot of different angles. And I think, he's been pressured up the middle. He hasn't had a steady offensive line. I think you give him some of those things, and you'll see those mechanics, be a lot better. He'll be a lot better. This team will start winning. But, to me, he's an above-average quarterback who needs to start winning to get into that elite category.
Now, Tim, just to change paces a bit here, Stafford's obviously the big talk right now, but there's other things going on with this team, and one of the big position battles coming up is going to be at the kick returner job. And you just wrote a piece on Stephen Miller not pretty recently. John Bonamegos likes what he's seen out of him so far. That's the special teams coordinator. Do you think Miller is the guy that's going to win this job?
I think he's got a legitimate chance. I really do. I was sitting with John Bonamego once, and he pulled up the vertical jump that Stephen Miller did at Appalachian State, and it was really an amazing video to watch. They had to take the tile out of the ceiling because the kid jumped so high. He jumped over the marks on the first jump, so they took the tile out. They had to raise it up, and the kid jumped 43. And I asked John, I said, how does that translate to the field? And he said, well, it's the explosion. And he says, when this kid gets the ball, he's got 4.3 speed, and he's got that explosion. And I think we saw that a little bit this spring. He'd get the ball, and he could just get to that gear real quick, and it was impressive. And I think that's really where he's got a shot to make this team as a punt kick returner. Now, he didn't do that in college. He was too important to Appalachian State as a 1,400-yard rusher. So, these guys just saw him when they were out scouting Sam Martin, and Stephen Miller happened to just go back there and start, fielding some punts. So he's still new at it. I think the preseason is going to be really huge for him. But just in terms of the raw physical abilities, I think he really fits in, that undersized speed guy, hard to find, gets to that gear quick. If he can handle the pressure of fielding balls, I think he's got a great shot. But I think there's a lot of guys in that mix. Patrick Edwards is one. Michael Spurlock is one. So, that's really going to be one of the fun battles to watch this preseason, who comes out on top for kick and punt returner.
Yeah, it absolutely will. I thought it was fun reading your piece. He jumped to 43 inches, and then he was disappointed because he actually wanted to get 45. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a freak athlete. He really is, and I think people are going to be excited when they watch him. John Bonamego kind of used Darren Sproles in the same sentence. I'm not ready to quite go there yet. We're talking about an undrafted kid out of Appalachian State, but there's some similar characteristics there between those guys, and that's why it's going to be fun to watch how that kind of develops over the next month.
Yeah, he'll definitely be one of the guys that make the preseason more fun to watch. I think a position battle me and Brandon have gone back and forth a bit on is at the right tackle position between Corey Hilliard and Jason Fox. Do you have any leanings on this, on where this position is headed?
I really do think it's Jason Fox's position to lose at this point. They're going to give both those guys equal reps. And Corey Hilliard's been in the league a little bit longer. He's got a little bit more starting experience. But the Lions thought they really got a steal when they drafted Jason Fox in 2010 in the 4th round. He slipped because of that kind of post-senior season knee injury. It didn't look good at the combine, and he slipped. He was probably a second-round talent in that draft. So I think the Lions have always thought that Jason Fox is really a great talent. He gained 18 pounds this offseason to kind of get bigger, stronger. He looks like a mammoth of a man, and if that knee can stay healthy, I think the Lions are pretty confident that he can be, a really good right tackle. He can be an athletic right tackle, obviously an upgrade in terms of athleticism from Gosder Chairless. So that's going to be a fun battle. But I think they know kind of what they have in Corey Hilliard. He's a swing guy. He can play the right. He can play the left. He's a very steady guy. If you plug him in there, you really don't worry about him. But there's the little unknown with Jason Fox in terms of that athleticism and really being able to see him do it and maybe be a pretty terrific right tackle. And if he shows some of those things, I think he's got the edge heading in. But like the return battle that we talked about, those preseason games are really going to determine that battle as well.
I'm glad you labeled Jason Fox a steal because I'm still smarting over not grabbing Jordan Mills, but I'll let that go. And we'll let you go. We have one more question for you because we're going back and forth on this, and we probably will throughout the season. Is Schwartz on the hot seat? Does he have to come up with a great season this season to come back the next year?
I don't think there's a win total per se. I don't think the Ford family's sitting there saying, Jim's got to get 10 wins or, Jim's got to make the playoffs. But they need a good season. I think the Ford family was pretty disappointed with 4-12. I talked to Bill Ford, and he was obviously very disappointed in it. The Ford family's never going to lay ultimatums out because you never know what happens in a season. They lose Matthew Stafford and Kelvin Johnson to injury, and the team goes and wins 4 games. That's certainly not Jim Schwartz's fault. So you can't put those kind of parameters on a season, but there needs to be vast improvement. I think this team needs to be relevant week 15, week 16. If they're not, and if Jim's kind of lost that team, I think the Ford family will sit down and kind of reevaluate that. And if they get off to a bad start, they get off to a really slow start, I think that seat maybe gets a little warm for Jim.
All righty. Well, we appreciate you coming on, Tim Twentyman. You can find him on Twitter at @Twentyman, and he's also writing for DetroitLions.com. Thanks for your time.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Football fans, looking to get healthy this year? Now is the time, and I have the perfect place for you. Save 10% at onnit.com/football radio. Exclusive PFC radio listeners save 10% off their order. That's onnit.com, onnit.com/football radio.
All right, so it was great to have a chance to talk to Tim. He's obviously got a more inside track to the team. He gets to see him and talk to him every day, and it was great to get his insight on a lot of things.
Well, how about that Jason Fox news? I mean, that's the first I'd really heard.
With us. Yeah, it's the first time all off season we've been able to read or hear anything agreeing with our stance on Jason Fox as should-be starter at right tackle, huh?
Well, and it was nice to hear someone. I mean, we're not gonna throw Tim under the bus and say no, he's the number one for sure right now. But he gave the impression that Jason Fox is leading this race. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we all know, or at least we both know that. I mean, he's the higher ceiling guy of the two. So he even said, Hilliard's the more he can do everything, but he's not great at anything guy. So. Yeah, it's good to hear someone on our side of the fence with Jason Fox and his ceiling, so to speak. That's looking towards the future. We're looking at these ESPN Futures Power Rankings things. I'm almost scared to get into this because I just so strongly disagree with everything I read on it, but it's fair to talk about. ESPN did the NFL Future Power Rankings, which for those of you who don't know is they're ranking how they think each team in the NFL will be in 2016. They do these rankings every year, and last year they did the projections for 2015, and they thought the Lions were going to be the 6th best team in the NFL. So now they do them again this year for 2016, and they have the Lions now as the 21st best team in the NFL. Brandon, I turn to you. Were you expecting such a severe drop here?
I mean, it was kind of crazy to drop that far. The season last year was such a big disappointment. I think everybody just looks at it and says, well, Detroit's back to being Detroit. But that is a huge fluctuation, especially when they didn't lose any of the young talent that they had, with maybe the exception of April. What other young, talented player did they lose?
They didn't. And, the QB situation on a scale of 1 to 10 went from an 8 to a 6.8. Was Stafford's, lesser production so severe that they dropped a full 1.2? Because Sean Hill is still sitting on the depth chart as the backup, and when he stepped in last season, he did tremendous. Where's the drop there? The roster quality, which I would argue that our roster is actually better at this point than it was last season, went from a 6.75 to a 5.8. And the draft, their ranking for the draft went from an 8.5 to a 5.7. I'd like to see more logic behind these steep drops besides, well, the Lions had a worse record this season, so they must just be worse at everything.
You asking for logic? Good luck with that one, buddy.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll give them, and actually, when you think about it, I'm not entirely sure, the 49ers was such a high score. They gave Kaepernick, they have him at the 8.7 for the quarterback.
Yeah.
Woo. They're going to have a hard time managing the salary cap with all those offensive linemen that are obviously above average. I mean, they did draft really well. I liked a lot of the things they did as far as getting some guys that they can kind of stash on their bench for now, like Tank Carradine, even that Lawrence Okoye, I'm not even sure how to say his name, but the British Olympian who had never played football before. I did a scouting report on him. He's exciting. He's very exciting. If he learns how to play football, watch out.
I think the point here is that these rankings are a little bit unjust for the Lions. I would say maybe they weren't worthy of being the sixth best team moving forward, but to drop them all the way to 21 is just where's the merit there? Like you commented on me wanting logic out of this. I do. I want reasoning. I want logic, and I don't see it here. It seems that just, I don't know, the best teams right now are apparently going to be the best teams moving forward because they had a good record last season. That's all I took from this.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, obviously how it works. The good teams are the only teams that are ever good. Next year, though, you're going to see a huge, one way or another, it's going up or down, and it's going to be either a big-time drop or a big-time jump, because if Ezekiel Ansah and that offensive line do not pan out, well, there goes a lot of your potential. But obviously, if they do pan out, now you got the cornerstones for a franchise. You can see them jump right back in that top 10.
So just for those keeping track at home, that was actually 27 minutes into the podcast before you mentioned Ezekiel Ansah.
I've got a stress ball that every time I want to say his name, I squeeze it real hard, so I at least could save it for a little later. But, place your bets for next time. We'll see where we get there.
Yeah, I was looking at my podcast notes, and I realized we didn't have any Ansah topics for today. I was wondering if you were going to find somewhere to get that name in, and lo and behold, you found a way.
Well, I thought about bringing him up as far as we need to start planning for his contract extension in 4 years. I mean, it just needs to be done now.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So, wow, I got to find a good transition out of that.
Well, from future winning to winning that has to happen now.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, yeah, Joe Schmidt. I brought him up in an earlier podcast. We did that Mount Rushmore bit, and I said he belonged on there as a defensive player and how he also was a successful coach with the Lions. And lo and behold, he pops up in the news he had an interview with Tim Twentyman, the man we just interviewed, and he talked to him about how the Lions need to get the flavor of winning. They don't really know how to win yet. He says they have to start learning how to beat the good teams if they're ever going to be a good team themselves, which, I mean, obviously there's simple merit in that. I really liked some of the points that he had to make. I mean, you kind of have to put stock in what he said. I mean, he's one of the few people alive that was part of Lions championship teams. So if Joe Schmidt speaks, I think we all have to give him the time of day and listen. And some of the stuff he said, like, here, I'll give you a quote. He said, "Until you experience that and get that in your blood and everybody understands what we have to do in order to get there, they're just climbing up the hill." So, I don't know. Maybe that's about Stafford. He's 1-2 against teams with a winning record at the end of the season. So, yeah, Detroit does really need to start beating good teams if they're ever going to be an elite team themselves. Did you take anything else from Schmidt's comments?
Well, as far as having to listen to him because he's won, you know who else has won championships? Meta World Peace.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to go.
Didn't Matt Millen win one with the Raiders, too, at some point?
Why'd you have to ruin the podcast like that? I might have to quit now.
I was just trying to disagree with my own point as well. I wanted in on the fun.
Man, you're just throwing credibility around all over the place today.
I know.
But as far as they need to learn how to win thing, wasn't that what 2011 was all about? That was a stepping stone? Why couldn't they continue to still beat these teams last year, at least the less talented teams or the teams that they should be, like getting drummed by the Cardinals? didn't they already know how to beat teams like that, if that's the logic? And not to mention, or don't forget about the last 4 games of 2010, when, I mean, that's all we read that whole offseason was, can the Lions build off of winning those last 4 games? And it kind of looked like they did. But I think as far as the step back, and I think that's the point that I really want to harp on here, people really underestimate the importance of that job at best position, that dynamicism that brings to the offense. I mean, I don't have the stats offhand, but I'm pretty sure you actually said something last podcast, or somebody said it something along the way, which is a very specific sourcing by me. But that with job at best, they won the first 5 games with him, and without him, they played pretty terribly. But I think of 9 of their 10 wins that year came with job at best in uniform, or something crazy like that.
Yeah, I think we all remember that Monday Night Football game he had against the Bears, where we finally got to see like what Javid Best can do and how he diversifies the offense. And yeah, that stretch when Best was healthy was when Calvin was catching a touchdown every week, or 2 touchdowns every week as well. So yeah, I mean, having that presence in the backfield that teams had to account for really did something for the Lions.
Well, that, and let's not forget that the defensive ends were basically non-existent last year. Kyle Anibas, I actually wrote an article about cutting him before the season. It wouldn't have saved a ton of cap space because of how much of his contract is guaranteed, but I just had that little faith in him. I mean, I don't even think anybody signed him now that I know of.
No, he's still sitting out there.
And, great motor and, team leader, all that good stuff, although I might argue that whole leadership thing as far as, yes, he worked hard, but there's a lot that went on during those last few years that kind of questioned whether there was any leadership. The other side, Cliff Averill, I still will never understand that drop-off. I can't get it.
Yeah.
He's a young guy in contract year.
Yeah, I think it's fair to question if there was really any leadership going on from anyone based on all the stuff that was going on with that roster. So we've got the Joe Schmidt comments. I don't know. I guess what you're getting at is there's a couple good points, but don't read too much into this.
I mean, I don't even know that I get into it that there were that many good points at all.
Yeah. There
is that whole calm under pressure, Joe Montana pointing out John Candy in the huddle while they go win the Super Bowl type thing. But Stafford already had that. Remember against Oakland 2 years ago when he drove them down the field and in that hostile environment and they took home the win? You can do that. That's pretty much all you really need is the ability to pull out the close games. As far as winning against teams beating teams with a winning record, yeah, that's obviously a problem, but I don't know. He's saying that you need to win to know how to win. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Like I need to know how to make money. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a pretty obvious point there, yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and move on from Schmidt's comments, which I don't know. I think we devolved there from. I don't know. There was some good stuff too. Yeah, there's not much going on there. So, Dave Damashek did his all-pro teams for each division. So what he did here is he took each division in the NFL and he made the best possible starters for offense and defense for each division. And there's 4 Lions in the NFC North set of them. He's got obviously Calvin Johnson on the offensive side of the ball, and then he's got Sue at defensive tackle. He's got Stephen Tulloch, very worthy of his inside linebacker spot, and then newcomer Glover Quinn at the safety position. So for the record, we've got 4 Lions, 5 Bears, 4 Packers, and 9 Vikings. Brandon, let's get your instant take here on the NFC North team.
Well, as far as the Lions go, I mean, Sue and Megatron, it's a pretty easy one.
Yeah.
Glover Quinn, that is very, very exciting. I'm excited about Glover Quinn. I think this can be a big thing for the Lions. But the Tulloch one, let's go ahead and open up that can of worms again if you really want to.
Okay. Well, I mean, who would you put there instead of Tulloch, I guess?
Well, that's the whole point. let's not just go ahead and anoint Tulloch an all-pro for the entire league. He's not even in that discussion.
It's a weak spot for the division, it is.
Well, exactly. There's nobody else that Chicago has. The rookie, I think John Bostic's probably going to be the one that ends up winning that job. And then you have Aaron Henderson, and who even cares for the Packers? It's Brad Jones and A.J. Hawk, who...
A.J. Hawk.
Yeah, exactly. Big whoop. And don't get me wrong. Tulloch can be a very good player. I'm just saying last year he didn't show me anything. I don't know where that player went. I don't know if I'm hoping he can come back because he's making way too much money to produce as he did last year.
I just still disagree with you. I don't know. Tulloch definitely won this one by default. I mean, there was no competition for that spot, so I can't argue that point. I don't know. I still saw what I wanted to see out of Tulloch last year, and we've already argued that point to death. I don't know. Let's not do any more with that. I think the fun thing here is that you call him Glover, I call him Glover. At some point, we're going to figure out which one's right. Seeing Glover or Quinn in these rankings is really cool because I don't know, to have a Lions safety up here. We just got this guy, and he's already one of the best. You know, we have one of the best safeties in the NFC North, along with Harrison Smith. I would argue against Harrison Smith being there, but yeah, Glover Quinn's in there. Calvin's the obvious one, and Ndamukong Suh. What do you think? Spring this on you here, but Henry Melton, do you think he's deserving over Fairley?
Yeah, the only reason being because Melton has proved it. He's been consistent. Melton is an exciting defensive tackle. He scares me every time the Lions play him. I like watching him. Cover your ears, earmuffs, whatever you want to do. I like watching the Chicago Bears play defense because I like watching Henry Melton. That guy is exactly what you want. Fairley hasn't been consistent enough. By the end of this season, I think that it will be a discussion. It'll be an argument that we'll get to have, hopefully, on here. But for now, it's Henry Melton, and I think it's a pretty easy decision.
Yeah. And looking at the rest of this NFC North, I think the weaknesses here are obviously along the offensive line. We've got Jermon Bushrod and Matt Khalil at tackle. We've got Brandon Fusco and T.J. Lang at guard and John Sullivan at center. I mean, that's not an all-star caliber set there.
No Rob Sims. No love.
Yeah, he's underrated, isn't he? I mean, he's consistently good, and no one ever notices him.
Well, nobody really notices offensive guards anyways, but yeah, I agree. As far as he's just a rock-solid player who continuously just does his job, and the fact that we don't talk about him probably, Pro Football Focus, 11th best guard in the league last year. So I don't know how he doesn't make this list, but, you know.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Brandon Fusco or T.J. Lang to, I guess, argue their merits. But, yeah, Rob Sims has to be worthy of it.
Exactly.
Other spots on here, just to nitpick, I guess, I would have personally rather seen Randall Cobb over Greg Jennings just because of how dynamic he proved himself to be last year. He had, 954 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns. I don't know, I think Jennings he's over it at this point. And then at the corner spot, I thought there was Sam Shields is on there. I think I would have rather seen Tremont Williams get that spot. Were there any discrepancies you had elsewhere in this division?
I'll agree with Sam Shields. I think he might be the better cornerback at this time. As far as, I actually thought, as far as Chad Greenway, maybe Lance Briggs. Briggs still brings it. He's still a very, very good outside linebacker. So Greenway might have been a little bit of a stretch. He's still good. But, and Harrison Smith, I feel like that's projecting a big jump from him. He was a very good rookie. He'll be a good player, but I would have probably put Louis Delmas there.
Really?
If you look around the other teams, there's really no other safeties that jump out at you. There's Harrison Smith
I'm on the major right train here with that other safety spot. Yeah, I mean, it's a ho-hum spot. Let's be honest. You're saying Louis Delmas. I mean, what has Louis Delmas done for us lately? You know, I mean, that's a projection in and of itself. We're saying based on potential, it's Louis Delmas, but you know, he's always hurt. I don't know. I'm just going based off of last season, really. I thought Wright would get it, but yeah, potential-wise, Delmas is there. We're nitpicking. I mean, the more fun question to ask here is he has the NFC West as the best divisional team in these rankings. He says that the West edges out the North. So let's go ahead and look at this. I don't know, position by position here, and see where the NFC West may actually be better. And first of all, at quarterback, it's not even close. We have Aaron Rodgers over Kaepernick, so there's nothing there.
CJ all day.
Running back, they have Marshawn Lynch, and we get Adrian Peterson. I don't think anyone's given them the edge there.
Well,
come on.
I won't just give it to him. Do you know how good Marshawn Lynch really is?
Come on. Don't do this.
Well, no. I'm saying, look, it's Adrian Peterson. He's the best running back in the league, but Marshawn Lynch he's right there.
Yeah, sure. And arguing against any other division, I'll give you that. But I mean, we're arguing against Adrian Peterson, so it's just it's not a discussion.
All right. Well, I tried to have one, but you just shut me out. Fine.
I was due for one. All right. So let's go to wide receiver. They've got Fitzgerald, Larry Fitzgerald, Percy Harvin, and Michael Crabtree. We're going with Calvin Johnson, Brandon Marshall, and Greg Jennings. Is this a tight race?
It's a tight race. Calvin and Fitzgerald, they're really, really similar. You give CJ a little bit of the edge. Marshall, though, I feel like Marshall is just a better receiver than Harvin. They're obviously different, but Marshall he's underrated at this point.
Yeah, he really is. He's always in the end zone.
And I mean, maybe the better comparison would have been if we had taken Brandon Marshall against Crabtree.
Sure.
You give the edge to Marshall, especially because it's pretty bold to put Crabtree on this list. Yeah,
I was trying to think though. I mean, who else do you put as the third best in the NFC West? You're not putting anyone from the Rams on there. Seahawks, I don't know. And I'm not putting Sidney Rice on this list. I don't know. I think they were kind of hamstrung there with where they could put a guy.
Bolden? I don't know. I mean, the fact that I said it in that Jim Mora playoffs voice is probably telling enough.
Bolden? Maybe a couple years ago. I don't know. I guess they're going with upside with Crab.
And one guy I was going to bring up earlier is maybe even Jordy Nelson over Greg Jennings.
Ooh, that's fun.
So I probably would take Randall Cobb or Jordy Nelson over.
Yeah.
Well, Percy Harvin though can be so good. It's a tough call.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. So we're both off of Greg Jennings here. Randall Cobb or Jordy Nelson. Yeah, I'm with you. I'd take either of them over there. But so we think the NFC North has the edge at the first three spots here: quarterback, running back, and receiver. Tight end that could be an interesting one. We got Vernon Davis against Kyle Rudolph. So I don't know. Better athlete versus what? I don't know.
I'd go Davis. I don't think it's that difficult.
I don't know. I wanted to make it fun, but no, it's Davis.
You shut down you shut down me trying to open up Marshawn Lynch. So this is me saying no. Davis.
No. Yeah, you're right. There's no argument to be had here. Okay, offensive tackle. We have Jermon Bushrod and Matt Khalil. They go with Joe Staley and Russell Okung. So I think we get trampled on that one.
Yeah, I agree. Bushrod he's pretty overrated at this point.
Yeah, he's above average at best, I guess. So guard, Mike Iupati and James Carpenter for them, and we are bringing to the table Brandon Fusco and TJ Lang. Go ahead and give me the dominant set of guards.
We'll call it a draw. I got to give that one to the NFC West. Iupati is actually one of the better guards out there. But other than that, I'm not going to break out the tape on this one. I'm sorry.
All right. And let's just quickly say center Max Unger versus John Sullivan.
Who cares?
Yeah, Unger. Okay. Yeah, we'll do that Jim Mora voice again. Unger? I don't know. Okay. So let's see. On the offensive side, we took the first three. They took the next 4. So we're down 4-3. Oh, all right, so far they do have us. Defense, they have a set of 3-4 defensive ends. We have a set of 4-3 defensive ends. So it's a little bit of a odder match, but they bring Chris Long and Darnell Dockett. We're bringing Jared Allen and Julius Peppers. Yeah, dominance.
Yeah, I don't think that's really it's a little bit of a discussion. Chris Long is a pretty solid player, but he's not Julius Peppers or Jared Allen. I understand that these guys are getting older, but there's nothing to suggest that one of them is going to fall off at such a rate that Chris Long is going to take him. And Darnell Dockett hasn't. I hear that he's reinvigorated now that he's playing under the coaching staff, but I'd like to see it before I go get. I'm not even sure I would have given him this spot.
Yeah, Darnell Dockett. Okay, so defensive tackle, the NFC West for some reason only gets one. Apparently Justin Smith is all they need at defensive tackle, and he goes up against Ndamukong Suh and Henry Melton. Smith's a good player. I think he brings out the best in Aldon Smith, but I think the edge here is clearly Suh and Melton.
Yeah, I don't know that I go clearly just because we saw how important Justin Smith was to that San Francisco defense last year. When he was out, that defense looked average.
Yeah, Smith the other Smith had like no sacks without Justin in the lineup.
Exactly, or even when he was, I guess I shouldn't say when he was out because I think he only missed like 2 games, but during the playoffs he was not himself. And he's 33 years old, I believe. He's, I think this is the first time he's ever been injured in any major way. I'm sure he's dealt with all sorts of stuff that we don't know about, but it's not a blown away type thing, but I guess you're right. Suh and Melton, that's a clear win.
It's 2 guys to 1 anyway, so there we go. Outside linebacker, this maybe here's where we can finally have some fun with this because they've been mostly landslides one way or another. Clay Matthews and Chad Greenway for the North, and then they've got Aldon Smith and Darrell Washington for the West. I think this could be one of the better discussions at least.
That's a really, really tough call because like we just discussed, Aldon Smith, what is he exactly? I mean, if we take away those games where you got to play with Justin, you at least have to, if you broke it down and compared, let's say, Clay Matthews against Aldon Smith, who do you want?
I think I take Matthews just because is his production more consistent or not? I take Matthews. I'm scared of what happened with Smith when he didn't have Justin Smith occupying blockers in the middle. So, I go Matthews there.
Yeah, I go Matthews as well. He had 14 sacks last year, but he did it all by himself. Yeah, and he's the more complete, more polished player. So if we're going to divide him up into half points or something, or at least you need to sweep it to take the point. We get that one into the NFC North, but Darrell Washington versus Greenway, it's not a tough call for me. Darrell Washington, he's an up-and-coming stud, even though he's who knows what's going to happen. I don't know if you know what happened. He's suspended for the first 4 games due to substance abuse or PEDs. Wow. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's some type of PED, but same program, same suspension. But he also got in some trouble, domestic violence situation. I believe the girlfriend had a broken clavicle. This could prolong his suspension. Based off that alone, Greenway would get it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Based on just on-field stuff, I'd lean towards Washington just because I love what I've seen and where his career looks to be going on the field. So just for the sake of it, I think it's close enough. We'll give it to the NFC North because it's close enough with those two. And we'll go North on this one. Inside linebacker. Okay. I just looked at the comparison. Okay. Navarro Bowman, Patrick Willis versus Stephen Tulloch.
Come on, buddy. Stick up for your man. Let's hear it.
Are you leaning towards Tulloch?
Just because I'm so blown away by the other side.
All right. Yeah, I'll go ahead and secede on that one. Bowman and Willis. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Cornerback, Patrick Peterson and Richard Sherman. Here's it. All right, two elite players there versus Peanut Tillman and Sam Shields. Oh, I think Shields kind of kills the discussion for the North on that one for me. But what about you?
Well, I'd like to say that Tillman he gets a lot of credit for all of the fumbles he forces and everything like that, but he is the best cornerback in the league. Look what he does to Megatron. I mean, he plays very well against him. He doesn't completely shut him down every time, but he definitely slows him down quite a bit.
Yeah.
So he's the number one in the league.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Patrick Peterson and Richard Sherman are probably 2, 3, or 4, somewhere in there.
Right. And Shields is a bit farther down the line.
Yeah, so if you the top talent, you get to Tillman, but unfortunately, to me, Sherman and Peterson are too high. Yeah, and that one goes to the West, which I think
just more balanced.
Yeah, and I think that means that unless we could have a tie here, if I'm not mistaken.
We can't do that.
Well, now we're getting down to the safeties. How do you feel about Earl Thomas and Dante Whitner going against Glover Quinn and Harrison Smith?
Well, unfortunately, I think GQ is on the losing side of this one. I lean towards Thomas and Whitner just because I'm a big fan of Earl Thomas, and I'm not a huge fan of Harrison Smith. Dante Whitner, I think his best days are actually behind him, but I think Thomas is talented enough to carry them to the win here. What about you?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and call an audible. One, I forgot about the GQ nickname. That upsets me that I didn't think about that. I failed the podcast listeners.
We have to carry that nickname.
But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and call an audible. I'm going to bring in Louis Delmas, sub out Harrison Smith, and I'm going to give the NFC North the win. Because those two are going to be very, very good back there, possibly great. Dante Whitner is not that good anymore. Like you just said, he wasn't even that good last year. I think as far as Pro Football Focus grade, he had a negative grade.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and give not only this position to the North, but the entire lineup to the North. I wish I had a little bell thing I could ring. I don't, but that's how I see it happening.
I agree with you. I think the only glaring spot where we're behind is that offensive line. I think they're miles ahead of us there. I think everything else we either dominate or are close enough to where it's a discussion. So yeah, NFC
North. Are you talking about Tulloch still? Are you still giving him that much credit?
Whoa! I don't know.
No.
I don't know. Oh, gosh, yeah, Tulloch. I'll stand by him. He's a Pro Bowl player. I think he's an impact guy.
He better be.
Yeah, he has been. He will be.
But again, you know who is an impact player or can be an impact player is you. If you get some supplements by going to onit.com. Did you check out that transition? That was phenomenal. But again,
so I want more. No, continue, please.
That's onit.com. onit.com/football radio. You'll get 10% off vitamins and supplements. And it's, like I said, our first sponsor. We're really excited you can get some quality products on there and save a little bit of cash while you're at it.
Gosh, these podcasts are just getting more fun as we go, don't you think?
Yeah, hopefully the listeners think so.
Yeah, we can only hope, and we are hoping to start giving them some on-field news here in the coming weeks as well. That should be a bit of an interesting transition for us.
Yeah, it'll be coming soon. But until then, we need the listeners to keep spreading the word. We're appreciating the feedback that we are getting. We would love to hear more from you guys by going to Facebook and liking our page or following us on Twitter. You can also find us on iTunes and Stitcher Radio as well as the ProFootballCentral.com site.
Yep, that's at Lions Central PFC if you're looking to get at us on Twitter. Like the Facebook page, do all the social media stuff. Just, talk to us. We really want to start reading some questions from you guys on the air. Let's get you guys into the discussion. I think that'd be a fun thing to do moving forward. But until next week, For Brandon, I'm Nick. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you then.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.